One thing I hate is looking at break even in dollars. It doesn't help us. It doesn't mean anything. So today we're going to talk about the better way to look at break even. What you can do to make sure you put your bar in better financial health. Welcome to the Bar Business Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Schneider, the Bar Business Coach. And if you're tired of figuring out every bar problem alone, well, join Bar Business Nation, our free Facebook group for bar owners who want better ideas and real conversations. The link's in the show notes. Today on the Bar Business Podcast, we're diving into why dollar-based break-even doesn't drive action, how to convert that into something that does, and what to do with that number operationally to drive your marketing, your staffing, your specials, and your promotions in order to meet the financial goals you want to meet. Now, something I want to get real clear here as we start out. When we talk break-even, break-even matters. And you should know your break-even. Right? You should know that on a dollar value. But also realize when we're talking break-even, you can tie this to any goal you want. Right? If you want 10% growth, you can use this same system to show 10% growth. And what is this system? It's really simple. Calculate the dollars for your break-even. Calculate the dollars for your goals. Divide that by your guest check average and look at it as a number of people. Because here's the funny thing. If I look at you and say, I've gone through all your books, I've looked at your finances, you have a little bit of a problem here. What we really need is $1,500 more coming in a week. $1,500 more a week. Seems like a pretty simple freaking statement, right? But as a bar owner, do you know what the hell that means? Can you actually sit there and go, oh, this is what $1,500 means. This is what it looks like. This is how I'm going to do it. No. But let's say your check average is $20 and I say what you need is 75 more people a week. Do you know what 75 people looks like? Can you divide 75 people out across the week and saying, well, on trivia on Wednesdays, if I get another 4, that's 4 of my 75. If I get 2 more tables, it's 8 of my 75. Can you do that? Probably, right? When we turn dollars, which is abstract and hard to consider, into people, how many more butts do I need in the seats? Now we've created something that's actionable, that's workable, that I can communicate to my team, that everyone understands. And quite frankly, kind of check it visually as you go through your day and through your week. So dollar-based goals, dollar-based break-evens are a terrible way to look at things. Customer-based is the way to go because it's easier to understand, and I can see that with my own eyes. Now, let's take a step back here. Why do dollar targets not drive action? Well, quite frankly, like I just said, they're hard to understand. It doesn't mean anything to anyone. And something you always have to keep in mind, right? You might have an MBA. Maybe you have an MBA in finance. You are a math and financial whiz kid that owns a bar. Great. Your bartender isn't. Your server isn't. You have to communicate with them in a way they understand. Give them something, and that is people, not dollar. So how do we calculate break-even guest count? Now, this would also be true of other math. I'll explain that in a second. But the basics here are the same whether we're talking break-even or not. It's just calculating that break-even versus inserting a goal number. So the first thing we need to know if we're going to calculate break-even is what is your total fixed cost for the month? Rent, utilities, insurance, salaried labor, any expense that does not change based on volume. That's the first number we need to identify. Step 2, determine your contribution margin per guest. What's left over from your average check after variable costs? Which, quite frankly, variable costs in this case mostly mean your prime cost, right? Your hourly labor and your pour cost. If your check average is, say, $35 and your combined variable cost rate is, say, 40%, which is low, but let's just use that as an example here. Your contribution margin per guest is going to be $21. Right? In actuality, it's probably closer to like $17.50. You're probably talking 50, maybe 60%. So maybe we're down to like $16. But that doesn't matter. The point here is you determine that contribution margin by taking your average check, subtracting the variable costs associated with that check, and that gives you this contribution margin per guest. Now, all you have to do is divide fixed costs by contribution margin by guest. That is your break-even guest count for the month. If we were going to do this on a number that's not break-even, all we would do is say, I want to sell 10 grand. How many people is 10 grand, right? If your check average was $100, it's 100 guests. That's really high and probably not the case, but it's easy math. The point here is, whatever number you want to look at, break even is something you should know. in a guest amount. But any goal you have, you can do this same process on. So what's so powerful about this guest count? And I alluded to this earlier. It allows you to easily identify the gap. If I know I need 50 more guests coming into this bar, well, now I have an exact number of people I need to bring in the door. Now, say you're open 7 nights a week. Well, maybe I can get 1 or 2 more on Mondays. I can get 3 more on Thursdays. I can get 5 more on Wednesdays, right? You figure out where you are trying to target these people. And now that I know how many people I need and where I'm going to try to target and bring them in, right? Let's be real frank here. Your easiest is always like Friday, Saturday night. It's easier to get busier on your busier nights than it is to get busier on your slower nights. But programming, trivia, and things can adjust that a little bit. But once I know the number of people I need to have come in the door and when I want them to come in the door, now it's a marketing game, right? I'm not saying I need to make some weird amount of money extra in the whole week. I'm saying I need 18 more guests on Tuesday. I need 50 more guests on Saturday. Now you figure out how to get there. We've turned an abstract idea of math on paper with fake money into a concrete, measurable, and actionable statistic that you and your team can understand. This also can become a management tool, right? If you know you're down on the number of guests you should have coming in, that's when you can push for more upselling. Let's try to get our guest check average up because we're not seeing the number of guests we expected. Frankly, I would be doing both at the same time, but that's just me. But remember, once you have the data that empowers you to make the smart decisions, all that's left to do is to think and make those decisions and to get your team on board because they can understand what you're talking about. So to sum up today, a revenue problem is a guest count problem. And that's a problem that generally has a marketing or a service answer, a programmable answer, a simpler answer than trying to figure out how to pull money out of a hat. Run your break even, run your goals by guest count, and then make plans to hit those goals and push yourself and your team to more customers, better sales, and better profits. That about wraps it up for today. If you enjoyed today's insights, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you are ready to take your bar to the next level, schedule a strategy session with me by clicking the link in the show notes below. Until next time, have a great day, and we will talk again later.